Tears of the Kingdom talk was one of the most highly anticipated games of 2023. After Breath of the Wild 2017 not only wowed long-term Zelda fans but also brought in thousands of new gamers, a sequel was inevitable and fans craved it for 6 long years. It felt like the automatic winner for Game of the Year in 2023 until it ran up against Baldur's Gate 3, but that doesn't stop it from being an awesome experience. Tears of the Kingdom is a direct sequel to Breath of the Wild, and the two games are very similar. Talk is set in the same location, Hyrule, though it does introduce new areas to explore, features similar gameplay mechanics, and focuses on open-world exploration. Given that Breath of the Wild is already one of the greatest games of all time, the developers didn't try to reinvent the wheel with Tears of the Kingdom. Instead of changing everything, they decided to add to and improve on what Breath of the Wild already did. With so much to do and explore, players can easily spend hundreds of hours running around as Link. Marvel's Spider-Man Miles Morales is the second game in the current Marvel Spider-Man series. The game allows players to step into the shoes of Miles Morales as he attempts to learn how to use his Spidey powers to make a name for himself and stand alongside Peter Parker. Miles first appeared in Marvel's Spider-Man, where he controlled similarly to Mary Jane's stealth segments. There, he had to sneak past every threat or enemy, because getting caught resulted in instant failure. Miles' inclusion in the 2018 game, though, helped introduce Miles and set Peter Parker up for a future mentor role to the younger Spider. In Miles Morales, Miles is the only playable character, but his dynamic with Peter remains strong. Miles has been a Spider for a little over a year, and he has trained under Peter to learn how to harness his power. This game focuses on Miles' struggle between his normal life and his life as a superhero. Miles has a ton of personality and a strong moral compass, which makes him a lovable character. The game also goes out of its way to make Miles' movements in combat unique while still making it clear that it belongs to someone still getting used to his powers. HalfLife Alyx's status as a virtual reality first-person shooter makes its excellence all the more impressive. VR has grown in popularity over the last several years, but it tends to have a lot more problems to worry about than simple bugs. It also requires players to have more than just a console or a gaming PC because they'll need a VR headset, which can get pretty pricey. Still, it's all worth it to experience HalfLife Alyx's incredible level design and Valve showing just how immersive a VR title can be. A prequel that takes place 5 years before the events of Half-Life 2, players take on the role of Alyx Vance, who first appeared in Half-Life 2 as a non-player character. She is an important member of the human resistance that stands against the Combine, a cruel alien empire that crosses multiple dimensions. In Half-Life Alyx, Alyx sets out on a journey to steal the Combine's super weapon. While Half-Life 3 still isn't confirmed, fans hope to see more from this incredible series. Developer Sucker Punch created an immersive samurai masterpiece with Ghost of Tsushima. One of the best-looking open-world games ever, it can be easy to take one look at Ghost of Tsushima and think its beauty is solely about graphical fidelity. However, its art direction is absolutely best in class, right down to its awesome Kurosawa mode, which makes the entire game look and feel like a classic black-and-white Akira Kurosawa movie. The game is set during the first Mongol invasion of Japan, and Jin Sakai is charged with the protection of Tsushima Island. Nothing matters more to Jin, and therefore the player, than keeping the island safe. What makes Ghost of Tsushima such a rare gem is how it plays with the topics of honor and duty. Jin can waver from the path of an honorable warrior, but more often than not, those decisions are beneficial in protecting the island with minimal loss of life. Players have to make their own decisions about what they believe is honorable, just and above all else, the right thing to do to protect their people. Alan Wake 2 is a survival horror game and a direct sequel to Alan Wake 2010. Remedy Entertainment developed Alan Wake 2 and Epic Games Publishing published it. Long-term Alan Wake fans and players new to the franchise fell in love with this game immediately, so much so that it made it into the running for the Game Awards Game of the Year. Although Alan Wake 2 inevitably lost to Baldur's Gate 32023, it's impressive that a horror sequel made such a big splash. As the title suggests, the game follows the story of Alan Wake. Alan has been trapped in an alternate dimension that he calls the Dark Place for 13 years. Alan is a best-selling writer with an odd talent. Everything he writes, at least while he's in the Dark Place, comes true. He attempts to use this ability to escape his prison by writing a story that revolves around FBI Special Agent Saga Anderson. For fans who want more of the story, this incredible game has 2 expected expansions, including a crossover with Control coming in October. While far from the first roguelike game, Hades is still the first game to come to mind when people mention the genre. It's easy to see why with Hades, Supergiant Games epitomized everything great about the roguelike genre. As challenging as it is, its design encourages players to keep coming back for one more run each time they play. It's the kind of game that places game design front and center, making it perfect for players who've grown tired of AAA game design that places graphics and storytelling above the actual fun of playing a video game. It doesn't hurt that Hades' art for the characters is gorgeous, creating an even more passionate fanbase for the title. Even now, there are still some people who argue that Hades should have won Game of the Year in 2020. There's a reason why Supergen Games chose to make Hades 2, even though they'd never done a sequel in the past. Whether it was Metroidvanias like Metroid Dread or a 3D platformer like Ratchet Clank Rift Apart, 2021 was the year of smaller titles. So it was with Hazelight Studios' It Takes Two, a two-player game about a couple repairing their relationship while trapped in the bodies of dolls. Though Hazelight had found success before with games like Brothers and A Way Out, It Takes Two managed to make everything that worked about those games coalesce into a perfect hit. It Takes Two's success starts with its unique playstyle. Players literally have to experience the game with another person. It constantly requires both players to work in tandem with each other, encouraging communication. It also tells a story unlike any normal video game, feeling more like an animated rom-com than a video game. Lastly, it's always throwing fun new elements at the players just long enough to get players through the game's relatively short runtime. It didn't seem possible that Square Enix could outdo what they did with Final Fantasy VI Remake, yet Final Fantasy VI Rebirth found a way to improve on everything in an already perfect game. The second part of the remake trilogy, Rebirth, takes things outside of Midgard and allows players to explore the rest of the world. This could have easily been a letdown, but Square lovingly brought every element that fans loved about the original game's setting to life in glorious detail. Rebirth feels like the first time Square has remembered what Final Fantasy meant to its fans for so many years. An iconic cast, fun and addicting combat, and some of the best music in JRPGs all make for a world that players can spend dozens of hours in without ever getting bored. While it leaves off on a cliffhanger, it just means fans get one more chance to experience this amazing world. Xenoblade Chronicles 3 was unlucky enough to launch in a year with Elden Ring, a once-in-a-generation title. That doesn't mean Xenoblade Chronicles 3 isn't great though, or that it can't even surpass Elden Ring in some ways. On the alien planet Aeonios, the two nations of Kiev and Agnes are locked in an eternal war where every soldier lives only 10 years. However, when soldiers from both sides get caught in a strange event, they suddenly run the risk of uncovering Aeonios' biggest secrets. Xenoblade Chronicles 3 offers one of the most likable casts in JRPG history. While the story is typical battle shonen fare, the execution is at such a high level even shonen veterans will leave impressed. Newcomers shouldn't let the 3 fool them. The game is completely approachable whether they've played a Xenoblade before or not. If people love experiencing quality JRPGs at Hades, they're doing themselves a disservice by avoiding this game. Leave it to Nintendo to know exactly how to evolve a classic franchise. Before Super Mario Bros. Wonder was released, fans hadn't gotten a new 2D Mario in over a decade. Yet Nintendo created a new title that felt evocative of the classic NES titles while also looking and feeling entirely new at the same time. Leaving the Mushroom Kingdom to visit their neighbors in the Flower Kingdom, Mario and the others are having a great time until Bowser appears. Attacking while everyone's guard is down, Bowser steals the Flower Kingdom's Wonder Flower, using its reality warping powers to become a fortress and capture most of the Flower Kingdom's people. Rescuing a kingdom from Bowser is standard fare, but it's the game's gorgeous level design that carries it. This is easily the best feeling and best controlling 2D platformer in ages and reminds people why Nintendo really is best in class. Baldur's Gate 3 feels like it hit the ground running with its fan base growing massively in the blink of an eye. Larian Studios developed and published the game, and it was clear that even before the game launched they had a massive hit on their hands. BG3 combines many elements from RPGs like Dragon Age and Dungeons & Dragons, making for a unique game that has a ton of replay value. Players can do many different runs and get different outcomes depending on who and how they play. Baldur's Gate 3 offers an unprecedented amount of control over how players approach any given situation. There's never a right way to do things, only the way they choose for themselves. The title feels like a DD campaign come to life, with all the randomness and choice that comes with it. At the same time, Larian tells a gripping, beautifully woven narrative that only gets better with each arc. Even outside the narrative, there's plenty of fun to be had. Players can romance the other characters in the party, or just engage with all the fun side quests. The Last of Us Part 2 is a direct sequel to The Last of Us 2013. In the original game, players get to know Joel and Ellie, an unlikely duo that eventually grow to care for one another in a world overrun with people infected with the cordyceps brain infection CBI. The plot of the first game revolves around Joel attempting to safely deliver Ellie to a team of doctors who believe her immunity is the key to a CBI vaccine. When Joel learns that they plan to kill her to harvest her brain, he kills everyone in the hospital to save her. The Last of Us I deals with the repercussions of Joel's final decision. Ellie learned the truth about Joel's massacre and their relationship suffered because of it, but Joel also made some dangerous enemies when he killed the people in that hospital. The Last of Us Part 2 makes the daring decision to kill Joel, a fan favorite early in the game. Joel's death leaves Ellie to deal with her grief and unresolved issues, which send her on a warpath of revenge. Ellie has to choose between continuing a horrible cycle of violence or finally finding peace. God of War Ragnarok seemed like the clear victor for 2020-22's Game of the Year, especially since God of War 2018 won the award. It took a heavy hitter to knock Ragnarok down, and that contender was Elden Ring. Elden Ring is a From Software action role-playing game, and it is known for being both beautiful and incredibly challenging. Elden Ring's DLC Shadow of the Erdtree was released on June 21, 2024, and it's so difficult that some veteran Elden Ring players have questioned how hard it is. While Elden Ring might be known for being challenging like most From Software games, it also has an incredible story, a massive open-world map to explore, and plenty of reasons to replay the game. Elden Ring's world building is also incredible. Players get to create a character and customize a build that lets them play the game any way they want. The Tarnished, the player character, sets out on a journey across the lands between to repair the Elden Ring. If the Tarnished succeeds, they'll become the new Elden Lord. Depending on which ending a player receives, they may change the lands between for the better or worse, or have no impact on it at all. God of War Ragnarok is a direct sequel to God of War 2018, and it was one of the most highly anticipated games of 2022. After the events of the first game triggered Ragnarok, Kratos spends the new game trying to avoid going to war with Asgard. Yet while Kratos wants nothing to do with fighting, Sony Santa Monica managed to improve on the combat several times over adding more build variety and an even crunchier moveset than before. While Kratos is trying his best to avoid fighting, Atreus has realized his true identity as Loki. He's also aware that, according to the prophecy of his mother's people, he has an important role to play in ensuring a prosperous future for all of Yggdrasil. Though it might not be what his father wishes, Atreus won't stand by and do nothing as Asgard moves to strike. Kratos and Atreus must learn to trust and support one another even during the hardest times. Kratos has an even bigger hurdle to get over, though letting his son go. When Capcom announced the remake of Resident Evil 4, fans went into it with cautious excitement. Resident Evil 2 Remake had everything a stellar remake needed, including modernized controls, gameplay that felt fresh while still paying respect to the original, and an updated story that covered plot holes from the original version. However, was this new Capcom going to be able to capture Resident Evil 4's horror and camp elements and still make them work in the modern era? Turns out the answer was a resounding yes. As the most beloved game in the series, remaking Resident Evil 4 was a risk, but one that paid off. Players control Leon S. Kennedy several years after the events of RE2. Thanks to Leon's special skills, he becomes a US government special agent. In RE4, Leon is sent to Spain to save the president's daughter from a mysterious cult. Leon quickly realizes he's trapped in another waking nightmare and has to fight infected cult members, monsters, and his own infection to save Ashley Graham from certain doom.